I remember the beginning so clearly it feels borrowed from another life. We were gentle with each other then, careful in a way that felt like devotion. He listened when I spoke, really listened, as if my words mattered enough to hold. He would reach for my hand without thinking, brush his thumb across my knuckles, leave notes in places I wasn't supposed to find until later. Love lived in those small gestures. It felt steady, unquestionable. We spoke about the future as if it were already waiting for us, shared mornings, familiar silence, growing old without fear. I trusted him the way you trust the ground beneath your feet. For a long time, I felt safe inside that trust. The changes didn't arrive all at once. They crept in quietly, disguised as tiredness, distraction, normal life. His eyes lingered on his phone longer than on me. Conversations shortened. Silences stretched. When I asked what was wrong, he smiled too quickly and said everything was fine. His explanations sounded reasonable, but they felt empty. I began to notice how his presence no longer warmed the room, how his touch felt distant, as if he were already halfway gone. Doubt settled into me like a low ache. I was afraid of naming it, afraid that saying it out loud would make it real. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to believe us. So I argued with myself, softened my instincts, told my heart to be patient. Loving him had become a quiet battle between hope and a growing sense of loss. When the truth finally surfaced, it didn't explode, it collapsed. One moment, everything was intact, the next, it wasn't. Betrayal doesn't always announce itself with chaos. Sometimes it arrives as a single, devastating certainty. I felt the world tilt, as if something essential had been pulled away without warning. Pain came first, sharp and breathless. Then humiliation, the kind that makes you question your own reflection. Anger followed, hot and relentless, quickly chased by emptiness. I tried to justify him, to rewrite the story so it would hurt less. I told myself it was a mistake, a misunderstanding, anything but a choice. Denial became a fragile shelter I hid inside, even as it collapsed around me. I realized I wasn't just losing him. I was losing the woman I had been with him, the one who believed without reservation, who trusted without armor. The turning point didn't come in a single moment of strength. It came slowly, painfully, through exhaustion. I grew tired of shrinking myself to preserve what was already broken. I began to see how much of myself I had given away in the name of love, how often I had chosen silence over truth. Somewhere in the wreckage, I found a quiet understanding: loving someone should never require abandoning yourself. Choosing myself felt like grief. It felt like tearing something out that was still alive. But it also felt honest. I don't know if this ending is final or merely a pause. I only know that I am no longer standing where I was before. I am learning my own worth in the absence of his validation. The pain hasn't vanished, but it has changed shape. It no longer defines me. What remains is a woman who loved deeply, lost painfully, and is still here, whole enough to begin again, wiser for having survived. After that realization, life did not suddenly become lighter. Healing was not a clean line forward, it circled back on itself, again and again. Some days I felt steady, almost calm. On others, the weight of memory returned without warning. A familiar song, a passing glance from a stranger, the echo of his voice in my mind, and the ache resurfaced. But this time I did not run from it. I let it pass through me, knowing it no longer owned me. I started to notice how much of my pain had come from trying to hold on to an idea rather than a truth. I mourned the future I had imagined more than the man himself. The version of him I loved had been shaped by hope, not by who he ultimately chose to be. Accepting this was difficult, but it was also freeing. It allowed me to release the question of why and replace it with something quieter: what do I need now? I began rebuilding myself in small, almost invisible ways. I paid attention to my own voice again, the one I had silenced for the sake of harmony. I learned to sit with solitude without seeing it as failure. In the quiet, I discovered parts of myself that had been waiting patiently, untouched by betrayal. Strength returned not as hardness, but as clarity. When I think of him now, there is no fire left in the memory. No longing, no rage, just distance. He exists as a chapter, not a wound. I no longer measure my worth by his choices. I measure it by my ability to remain honest, even when honesty costs me love. I don't know what comes next, and for the first time, that uncertainty doesn't frighten me. My heart is more careful now, but it is not closed. It understands that love is not proven by endurance alone, but by mutual care, truth, and presence. This story began with devotion and ended with awakening, and somewhere between loss and understanding, I found myself again, no longer waiting to be chosen, but choosing. There are moments now when I catch myself breathing more deeply, as if my body has finally learned it is safe again. I move through my days without bracing for disappointment, without replaying conversations to find where I went wrong. The constant vigilance has faded. In its place is a quieter awareness, one that trusts instinct instead of doubting it. I've come to understand that love should not feel like uncertainty disguised as patience. I mistook endurance for devotion, silence for strength. I thought staying was proof of love. Leaving, I learned, required far more courage. It asked me to walk away not only from him, but from the version of myself that believed love had to hurt to be real. Sometimes I wonder who I might have become if none of this had happened. The thought no longer fills me with sadness. I wouldn't trade the pain, but I respect the woman it shaped. She is gentler with herself. She no longer rushes to fill emptiness or fears being alone with her thoughts. She has learned that peace is not boring, it is earned. I notice how differently I listen now, to words, to pauses, to what is not said. I no longer chase warmth where there is none. If something feels distant, I believe it. If something feels safe, I allow myself to stay. Love, I've learned, is not about convincing someone to choose you. It is about recognizing when you are already chosen, by them, and by yourself. My heart still carries the memory of love, but it is no longer heavy. It rests quietly, open enough to feel, strong enough to walk away if it must. Whatever comes next will meet me as I am now, not desperate, not diminished, but whole. And if love returns to my life, it will not begin with longing. It will begin with peace. Peace has a different sound. It doesn't rush toward you or demand to be noticed. It settles in slowly, like light at the end of the day, soft and unannounced. I feel it now in the way I wake up without a knot in my chest, in the way my thoughts no longer orbit around someone else's absence. I am present in my own life again. I've stopped explaining my past to justify my boundaries. I no longer apologize for needing honesty, consistency, or care. What once felt like too much, I now recognize as basic. Love should not require translation. It should feel clear, even in its complexity, and when it isn't, I trust myself enough to step back. There are days when I feel gratitude, not for the betrayal, but for the clarity it brought. It stripped away illusions I clung to out of fear. It showed me where I was compromising myself in the name of love. That knowledge stays with me, not as a warning, but as a guide. I walk forward differently now. Slower. More aware. I don't rush connections or fill silence just to feel close to someone. I let things unfold. If someone meets me with openness, I meet them there. If they pull away, I no longer chase, I let go. That, too, is a form of love. This story no longer belongs to loss. It belongs to becoming. To the woman who stayed when it would have been easier to disappear. To the heart that broke and still chose honesty over bitterness. I am not who I was, and I don't need to be. I carry love with me, not as a wound, but as wisdom. And wherever I go next, I go whole. Wholeness, I've learned, is not the absence of scars. It's the ability to touch them without reopening the wound. I feel that now, when memories surface, they no longer pull me under. They pass through me like weather, leaving the ground intact. I don't romanticize the past anymore. I see it clearly, and clarity is its own kind of mercy. I've begun to trust timing again. Not as something that owes me answers, but as something that unfolds whether I understand it or not. I no longer rush to label what I feel or where I'm going. There is relief in letting life meet me where I am, rather than forcing myself to be somewhere else. Sometimes I catch a glimpse of myself reflected in a window or a mirror, and I notice a quiet change. My eyes look steadier. Softer, but not fragile. There's a kind of grounded presence there that wasn't before, like someone who knows she can survive disappointment and still remain open. That knowledge is powerful. It changes how I love, how I listen, how I stay. I don't know if I'll ever stop believing in love. What I know is that I believe in truth more now. In reciprocity, in the simple, radical idea that love should feel like home, not something you have to earn every day. And if love doesn't come for a while, I am still full. Still enough. This is not a triumphant ending. There is no dramatic resolution, no final lesson wrapped neatly in words. There is only continuity, a life moving forward with intention, with honesty, with care. And that feels more real than any perfect ending ever could. I am here. And that is enough. This is where the story rests. Not in certainty, not in answers, but in acceptance. I no longer search the past for meaning or the future for reassurance. I live in the quiet space between, where I am no longer defined by what I lost, but by what I chose to keep. My integrity. My voice. My heart. Love did not fail me. It revealed me. It showed me how deeply I can feel, how fully I can give, and how strong I can be when I choose myself. That knowledge stays with me, steady and unshaken. It is not something that can be taken away. I carry this story gently now. It no longer aches when I hold it. It simply reminds me that I am capable of growth, of honesty, of walking away from what cannot meet me with the same care I offer. That is not bitterness. That is wisdom earned. If this is the end, it is not an ending shaped by loss, but by return. A return to myself. A return to truth. A return to a love that begins and ends within me. And that is enough.